Hello, and welcome to Wendy's Weird World. This is your trigger warning for the following story coincidences. It does have adult themes such as visiting a bar, distressing mental health issues, an illegal drugging, and an automobile crash. No violent images are used in the storytelling process, but if any of these may give you an issue or make you uncomfortable, this is your cue to stop the video. Thank you. Do you believe in coincidences? You know how you never really notice seeing or hearing something until you have a significant event around that particular word or phrase? Like, you buy a car and then suddenly that model is everywhere? Or someone close to you mentions a place and then it feels like it's just following you around? Well, this story is like that. But instead of a car or place, it's a name. A name that I couldn't escape. It started on a Friday night. My friends and I planned a casual night out at a small club. The plan was simple, just to have a couple of drinks, maybe dance, shoot some pool, just generally unwind from the week's grind. Work had been especially brutal, and we all needed the escape. My bestie Christina and I got there first and snagged a table in our usual corner of the dimly lit club. The air was thick with the scent of stale beer and the hum of many conversations mixed with the beat of the music. Johnny, who was one of the guys in our group, introduced us to a co-worker he had brought along. His name was Thaddeus. Well, that's not a name you hear so often, so it stuck with me. As the night went on, we talked, we laughed. Thaddeus and I had hit it off in a way that felt easy and unforced. But by the end of the night, we parted ways without exchanging numbers. I figured if fate wanted us to meet again, then he'd turn up with the group another time. The next morning, I was lounging on the couch, half watching the local news. The lifestyle segment came on, and it was featuring a guy showing off different indoor plants. His name? Thaddeus. I remember thinking, that's weird. As fast as it started, the weekend was over, and Monday brought another strange coincidence. I had to stop by the bank, and there was a new teller. His name tag read Thaddeus. My mind flashed back to the club. Maybe it wasn't such a rare name after all. On my way home, I decided to stop and grab a burger. While I was waiting for my order, I glanced at the receipt. Thaddeus was my cashier. I couldn't believe it. When I picked up the order, there it was again, staring right back at me from his name tag. Thad. By now, the name was following me around like a persistent shadow. Was the universe trying to tell me something, or was I just seeing patterns when there were none? I decided to look it up. A quick web search revealed that Thaddeus wasn't a common name, especially outside of certain religious groups. Trying to shake off the weird feeling, I turned on my phone for some mindless entertainment. After a few funny videos, the creator's name flashed across the screen. Thaddeus. That was it. I was done scrolling. I needed to veg out, so I turned on the TV. The sitcom rerun playing had been a go-to comfort for years. Just as I was settling in, the character introduced her date. Thaddeus. Seriously? Panic was starting to creep in. I could feel my heart racing, my breath coming quicker. This could not be happening. I grabbed my phone and called Christina, hoping that she would talk me down from this ridiculousness. Hey Tina, I started, my voice shaky. You won't believe the day I've had. I spilled the whole bizarre sequence of events to her. Christina listened patiently, a soothing presence in my spiraling world. Then she said, "It's just a coincidence. You met a guy named Thaddeus, and now you're noticing the name everywhere. It's like when you buy a red car and suddenly there's red cars everywhere. My grandfather was even named Thaddeus, remember? No, I remember your grandfather's being named Walter and Jefferson. I frowned at the phone. Christine had never mentioned a Thaddeus before. Well, maybe I was thinking of a great uncle or something, she backtracked. Her voice was steady as ever, but I could sense the strain. I gotta go, I cut her off. The unease is building. Christina's logical explanations weren't comforting to me. I hung up. I needed some air, so I decided to go for a drive. I pulled out of my driveway and turned the opposite direction of my usual route, aimlessly cruising through the neighborhood. The streets were soothingly familiar until they weren't. Suddenly, I was staring at the street sign that read Thaddeus. How had I never noticed this before? I felt like my world was warping around me. I turned left onto Thaddeus Street, my mind buzzing with confusion and anxiety. A moment later, there was a jolt, a sharp crunching sound, and everything went black. When I came to, I was in a small, sterile hospital room. The harsh fluorescent light stung my eyes. My parents were there, along with Christina. Relief washed over their faces as I stirred. "Thank God you're awake," Christina said, squeezing my hand gently. Hugging was clearly off the menu for now. I felt a dull ache all over, but my mind was clearer than before. "What hit me?" I asked, trying to piece it together from the fragments of my memory. How fast was that idiot going? They exchanged puzzled glances. "Jules," Christina began softly, "you weren't hit by anything." "What do you mean? I remember the impact," I insisted. My confusion was deepening. "You passed out at the club," she explained. "Someone spiked your drink. You were having trouble breathing, and they were about to throw you out, thinking that you were just drunk. I called an ambulance." I blinked, trying to process this. Flashes of that night came back to me. The club, the table, then nothing. "Thaddeus?" I asked. The name slipped out almost involuntarily. Christina's brow furrowed. "Who's Thaddeus?" she asked. "It was just us. Me, Johnny, and the others." I just stared at her. The pieces of my reality shifting and slipping out of place. That name had haunted me. The faces, the strange coincidences, none of it made sense now. My mind raced back to that moment in the club, the stranger I had talked to and shared a laugh with. I realized then, with a cold clarity, that maybe Thaddeus wasn't just a name. It was something, or someone, that had bled through the edges of my reality, leaving traces in my world that no one else could see. As I lay there, the room spinning around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that Thaddeus, whoever or whatever he was, had brushed against my life in a way that had forever changed it. A few days later, I was finally cleared to go home. Dr. Morrison handed me a stack of discharge papers and a list of follow-up appointments. I thanked him. Something made me glance down at his ID badge. There it was, clear as day. Thaddeus Morrison, MD. My breath caught in my throat. I felt a chill run down my spine as I met his eyes. He smiled, a perfectly ordinary and professional smile, but it sent shivers through me. I mumbled a thank you and held my breath as he turned to leave. Thankfully, Christina was able to give me a ride home, and it was just a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about that name that had been following me. Was it just a string of coincidences, or was there something more to it? As Christina pulled in my driveway, I tried to shake off the eerie feeling. But I knew every time I heard that name, every time it cropped up in my life, I would wonder. And I'd remember the strange, surreal fever dream of a week that Thaddeus was everywhere. I'm just thankful the real one was at the hospital, or I might not be here to tell the tale.